Alastair, great to see you there. So far, this seems to have gone better than anyone at number 10 could have hoped for.
It does. I mean, you remember from those visits to the White House, Andrew, they still haven't sorted this business of they bring in the reporters at the top of the meeting. And normally we're now used to getting live pictures, but we don't see the pictures. The sort of word leaks out of what's discussed, and then eventually we see the pictures. But the word that has so far come out appears to be focused upon Keir Starmer handing a letter from King Charles and Donald Trump seeming to be very happy and excited about having a second state visit, seeming to agree with Keir Starmer in the UK on the Chagos Islands, and also in relation to Ukraine. I think we'll obviously get a lot more detail on that when they do a proper press conference later. But
friendly words and friendly words also on tariffs, or at least not aggressive words on tariffs. Now, if he comes out with an opt-out from the tariffs threat and the acceptance that Zelensky should be at any peace talks, then that's a really big win, isn't it?
Yeah, so let's just see where it goes. But I think definitely the mood music thus far seems to be very, very positive. And these meetings, as you were saying earlier, they really do matter. I mean, these are the stuff of history. Funny enough, when you were introducing the one about George Bush, don't forget there were some very tricky summits with Bill Clinton, albeit that we were very politically close in the run-up to the war in Kosovo as well. So these are always very big, and we had, I was at dozens of them, and some of them more memorable than others. But I think that this one for Keir Starmer is politically about as tricky as it gets.
And it's all about, as you know so well, it's about personal relationships. I mean, we both remember those somewhat excruciating pictures of Tony Blair and George W. Bush squeezed into jeans just slightly too tight for them, walking out of the thing. And then Bill Clinton and Tony Blair each wanting to be the big ego in the room and just eyeing each other up in a cautious way. This time round, Keir Starmer wasn't submissive, he was very polite. He intervened in the press conference early on and said what he wanted to say, but he managed to do it in a way that didn't seem to rile this president who has such a thin skin.
That's what's so difficult. Trump is very, very unpredictable. And I also think he's actually very even different to the Trump Mark I. I think he seems much more to be the 300-pound gorilla. I thought at Macron's press conference, for example, he started to look very impatient when Macron maybe went on a bit long. And it has to be about him. That's why we loved the thing about the king. And there will be British people and there'll be Labour people who will be tonight thinking, oh, my God, do we really have to give this guy a state visit? But the truth is, yes, we do, because that is part of statecraft.
And how dare you oil up to this terrible man and all the rest of it. But that is the world in which we live. When you were doing those visits for Tony Blair to American presidents, how much sort of sitting down before you went and assessing the sort of psychological state and temperament and mood of the other guy went on? In other words, were you sitting down there saying, well, of course, George W.'s in real trouble over this. You'll be very interested if you talk about that, don't, and so on. Just give us a sense of how these meetings are prepared for.
Well, for a meeting like this, you do a lot of preparation. And obviously the most important thing is the preparation about the policy and the arguments and the issues that you're going to talk about. But partly because they are so surrounded, wraparound media with the pool spray at the top of the meeting and the press conference itself and all the talk that goes with it, a lot of preparation goes into that. And obviously, the more you know each other, the better and the easier that becomes. But I would think for this one, Keir Starmer would have thought of long and hard, right down to the detail of, the way that Macron grabs and they're all doing the sort of grabbing. That's not Keir Starmer. But I did notice, for example, when Trump met him at the door of the West Wing and Keir didn't answer a question, Trump did. But Keir, I noticed, did sort of rather gingerly put his hand on Trump's arm. You do think about these details. You think about... when do you interrupt? If Trump comes out with stuff that isn't factually correct, when do you
What do you say?
Macron decided that on the issue of European funding, he couldn't let it go. But there'll be lots of stuff tonight where Trump will say all sorts of stuff and Keir will just have to let it go.
Oh, for a parallel world in which we were both in the room. Alastair, thank you very much indeed for talking to me.